The refugee ship moved slowly through the empty space between stars. It was an old ship, built many years ago for trade and short trips. It was never made to carry 3,000 people across the galaxy. But war does not care what ships were made for. Kethra sat in a dark corner of the lower deck, her back against the cold metal wall. Her baby son, Malik, was in her arms. He was crying. He had been crying for 6 hours now, and nothing she did could make him stop. The Volanti were a gentle people. They had thin bodies, pale skin that looked almost white, and large amber eyes that could see well in low light. Their hands had 4 long fingers, and their voices were soft like whispers. For thousands of years, they had lived on their home planet, a peaceful world called Velanth. They were scientists, artists, and teachers. They had never been warriors. Then the Harkon Swarm came. The Swarm was a race of insect-like creatures that moved from planet to planet, eating everything in their path. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. When they arrived at Velanth, the Volanti had only 3 days to escape. Millions died. Only a few thousand made it to the ships. Kethra had been a teacher before the invasion. She taught young children how to read and write. She had a small home near a river and a garden where she grew purple flowers. All of that was gone now. Her husband had died trying to get them to the ship. She had watched the swarm take him as she ran with Malik in her arms. Now she was alone. Alone in a broken ship, surrounded by strangers who were just as lost as she was. Malik screamed again, his tiny voice breaking with exhaustion. Kethra held him closer and tried to sing. It was a lullaby her mother had sung to her, a song about stars and dreams and safety. But her voice was weak, and the song did nothing to calm her son. A Volanti woman nearby looked at her with tired eyes. The woman had 3 children of her own, all sleeping at her feet. She had managed to calm them hours ago, but now they stirred at the sound of Malik's cries. "Can you not quiet him?" the woman asked. Her voice was not angry, just tired. "I am trying," Kethra said. "I have tried everything." "The ship's medic," the woman suggested. "Perhaps he has something." Kethra had already been to the medic. His name was Sarath, an old healer with kind eyes and steady hands. He had looked at Malik and shaken his head. "The infants need the frequency," Sarath had explained. "On Velanth, our planet gave off a special vibration. It was in the air, in the ground, in everything. Our babies felt it, and it calmed their nervous systems. Without it, they become restless. They cannot sleep. They cry until they are too tired to cry anymore. Is there nothing you can do?" Kethra had begged. Sarath had looked at her with old, sad eyes. "I am sorry. We have no way to recreate the frequency. All I can do is give you this thermal blanket. Warmth sometimes helps a little." But the blanket had not helped. Nothing had helped. Kethra rocked Malik back and forth, her arms aching from holding him for so long. She whispered to him, told him stories about the home they had lost, promised him things would get better. But even as she spoke, she did not believe her own words. On the upper deck, Captain Torvak stood in the command center, staring at the screens with growing worry. Torvak was old, nearly 200 years by Volanti counting. He had been a trade captain for most of his life, moving goods between planets and avoiding trouble. He had never wanted to be a leader of refugees. But when the swarm came, someone had to take charge, and the others had looked to him. "How are the engines?" He asked his engineer, a young male named Peth. Peth shook his head. "Failing, Captain. We have maybe 2 more days of power if we are lucky. After that, life support will start to shut down. And the distress signal? Still broadcasting. But we are far from any major trade routes. I do not know if anyone will hear us." Torvik closed his eyes for a moment. 3,000 people depending on him, and he could not even keep the ship running. He thought about his own family, lost in the invasion. His wife, his daughter, his grandchildren, all gone. He had not even had time to say goodbye. A sound caught his attention. Even from the command center, he could hear the faint crying of an infant somewhere below. It had been going on for hours, a constant reminder of everything they had lost. "Captain," Peth said suddenly, his voice sharp with surprise. "I am picking up something on the sensors." Torvik opened his eyes and moved to the screen. "What is it?" "A ship. It is approaching fast." Peth looked at the data, his amber eyes widening. "It is not Volanthi. It is not Harkin either. The signature? I think it is human." Torvik felt his blood go cold. Humans. He had heard stories about them. They were a young species, new to space travel. Some said they were kind and helpful. Others said they were violent and unpredictable. Torvik had never met a human himself, and he had hoped to keep it that way. "Can we run?" he asked. Peth shook his head. "The engines are too weak. They will catch us easily." Torvik thought for a long moment. Below, the baby continued to cry. Around him, 3,000 people waited for him to make a decision. "Do not run," he said finally. "Let them come. We have no other choice." The human ship came closer. It was a medium-sized vessel, bigger than their refugee ship, but not by much. On its side, Torvik could see words in the human language. He could not read them, but his translator told him the name, Wanderer. A voice came through the communication system. It was a female voice, speaking in careful Volanthi with a strange accent. "This is Captain Laura Bennett of the Terran Exploration Corps. We received your distress signal. Do you need help?" Torvik looked at Peth. The young engineer shrugged, as if to say, "What choice do we have?" Torvik pressed the communication button. "This is Captain Torvik of the Volanthi refugee vessel. Yes, we need help. Our engines are failing. We have wounded. We have children." There was a brief pause. Then the human voice returned, warm and steady. "We are coming to you. Hold on. Help is on the way." Torvik released the button and let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Behind him, through the walls of the ship, the baby still cried. He did not know if he had made the right choice. He did not know if the humans would help them or harm them. All he knew was that they were out of options, out of time, and out of hope. God, and sometimes that is when miracles happen. The human shuttle moved through space like a small fish swimming toward a whale. It was gray and sturdy, built for practical use rather than beauty. Inside were 5 humans, each one checking their equipment as they prepared to board the refugee ship. Captain Laura Bennett sat at the front, watching the Volanthi vessel grow larger through the window. She was 53 years old, with brown hair that had started to turn gray at the edges. Her face had lines around the eyes and mouth, marks of a life spent traveling between stars. She'd been a captain for 20 years, and she had seen many things in that time. But she had never seen a ship in such poor condition. "That thing is barely holding together," said Danny Ortega, her medical officer. He was young, maybe 28, with dark hair and quick eyes that never seemed to rest. He carried a large bag full of medical supplies, and another bag hung from his shoulder. "Which is why we are going to help them," Laura said simply. Beside Danny sat Rosa Delgado, the ship's engineer. She was a quiet woman in her 40s, with strong hands covered in small scars from years of working with machines. She did not talk much, but when she spoke, people listened. The other 2 crew members were Sam Cooper and Nate Lawson. Sam was the pilot, a cheerful young man who always seemed to be smiling. Nate was security, tall and serious, with a shaved head and careful eyes. Both men had volunteered for this mission without being asked. "What do we know about the Volanthi?" Nate asked as the shuttle moved closer. Laura pulled up information on her tablet. They are a peaceful species from a planet called Valanth. Scientists and artists mostly. Their world was destroyed by the Harkin swarm about 3 weeks ago. This ship is carrying survivors. How many? Danny asked. About 3,000, according to their distress signal. Danny let out a low whistle. That ship does not look big enough for 3,000 people. It is not, Lara agreed. Which means they are crowded, probably sick, and definitely scared. I want everyone on their best behavior. We are guests on their ship. We treat them with respect. Yes, Captain, the crew said together. The shuttle docked with the refugee ship a few minutes later. There was a loud sound of metal connecting to metal, and then the doors opened. A wave of warm, stale air hit them immediately. It smelled of too many bodies in too small a space, of fear and exhaustion and despair. Lara stepped through first. She found herself in a narrow corridor filled with Valanti refugees. They sat along the walls, lay on the floor, stood in small groups wherever they could find room. Their pale skin looked gray under the dim emergency lights. Their large amber eyes watched her with a mixture of hope and fear. An old Valanti male approached her. He walked with the careful steps of someone who had carried heavy burdens for too long. I am Captain Torvik, he said in accented but clear English. Thank you for coming. Lara extended her hand, then realized the Valanti might not know the gesture. But Torvik reached out and took it, his four-fingered hand cool against her warm skin. Captain Lara Bennett, she said. We are here to help. What do you need most? Torvik looked around at his people, his old eyes filled with pain. Everything, he admitted. Our engines are failing. We have no spare parts. Many of our people are injured or sick. Our food supplies are running low. Our water recyclers are working at half capacity. Lara nodded, already making plans in her head. Danny, start triage on the wounded. Rosa, go with their engineer and see what you can do about the engines. Sam, Nate, help distribute whatever supplies we brought. Her crew moved immediately, spreading out through the crowded ship. Danny opened his medical bag and began examining the nearest refugees. Rosa followed a young Valanti male toward the engine room. Sam and Nate started handing out food bars and water packets. Lara stayed with Torvik, walking through the ship to see the situation for herself. Everywhere she looked, she saw suffering. A mother holding 2 sick children. An old man with a bandage over his eyes. A teenager sitting alone, staring at nothing. Her face blank with shock. And somewhere in the ship, a baby was crying. Lara heard it clearly now, a high, desperate wail that cut through all the other sounds. It was the kind of cry that made something deep inside her want to find the source and make it stop. Not out of annoyance, but out of instinct. Out of the need to help. What is that sound? She asked Torvik. The old captain sighed. One of our infants. He's been crying for many hours. His mother cannot calm him. Why not? Torvik explained about the frequency, about how Valanti infants needed a special vibration to calm their nervous systems. Without their home planet, the babies could not settle. They cried until they exhausted themselves. And there is nothing you can do? Lara asked. Nothing we have found. Torvik shook his head sadly. Our medic has tried everything. The mothers are desperate. Some of the infants have already become very weak. Lara listened to the crying for a moment longer. It pulled at something inside her, something old and deep. She had never had children of her own. Her life in space had not allowed for it. But she had nieces and nephews back on Earth, and she remembered holding them when they were small, remembered the weight of a baby in her arms. Take me to them, she said. Torvik looked surprised. Captain, I am not sure what you could do. Our own people have tried. Maybe I cannot do anything, Lara admitted. But I would like to try. The old captain studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. This way. They walked through the crowded corridors, stepping over sleeping refugees and around small groups of people talking in low voices. The crying grew louder as they moved deeper into the ship, until Laura could feel it in her chest. Finally, they reached the corner of the lower deck. A young Volante woman sat against the wall, holding a small bundle in her arms. She was rocking back and forth, singing softly, but her voice was broken and tired. The baby in her arms was screaming. Kethra looked up as they approached. Her amber eyes were red from crying, and her pale face was wet with tears. She looked at Laura with confusion, then fear, then something like desperate hope. "This is Captain Bennett," Torvik said gently. "She is human. She has come to help us." Kethra stared at the human woman. Laura was so different from the Volante, with her compact body and strained round eyes and pink skin. But there was something in her face, something soft and kind, that made Kethra want to trust her. "I cannot stop him from crying," Kethra whispered. "I have tried everything. I am so tired. He is so tired. But nothing works." Laura knelt down beside her, moving slowly so she would not frighten the young mother. She looked at the baby, at his tiny blue face screwed up in distress, at his small hands grasping at the air. "What is his name?" Laura asked. "Malik," Kethra said. "His name is Malik." Laura smiled gently. "Hello, Malik. You have had a hard time, have you not?" The baby continued to scream, his little body shaking with the effort. Kethra held him tighter, her own body trembling. "May I hold him?" Laura asked quietly. Kethra hesitated. Every part of her wanted to say no, wanted to keep her son safe against her chest where nothing could hurt him. But she was so tired and he was so upset, and nothing she did was working. She looked at the human woman, at her steady eyes and gentle smile. She looked at Torvik, who nodded slightly. Then slowly, carefully, she placed her son in the arms of a stranger. Laura took the baby carefully, supporting his small head with one hand and his body with the other. Malik weighed almost nothing, lighter than any human baby she had ever held. His skin was cool to the touch, a pale blue color that reminded her of morning sky. He continued to scream, his tiny lungs working hard to push out the sound. For a moment, Laura just held him. She looked at his face, at the way his eyes squeezed shut with each cry, at the tears that ran down his small cheeks. She saw his four-fingered hands reaching out, grabbing at nothing, searching for something he could not find. Then she did what felt natural. She pulled him close to her chest, tucking him into the space between her arm and her heart. She adjusted his weight so he was comfortable, his small ear pressed against her body, and she began to hum Dodd. It was an old song, one her grandmother had sung to her when she was very young. Laura did not remember all the words, but she remembered the melody. It rose and fell gently, like waves on a calm sea, like breath in sleep, like the beating of a heart. She swayed slightly as she hummed, moving her body in a slow, steady rhythm. She had done this before, many times, with her sister's children when they were babies. It was something human mothers had done for thousands of years, something that came as naturally as breathing. Malik's cries began to soften. Kethra watched with wide eyes, her hands pressed against her mouth. She could not believe what she was seeing. Her son, who had screamed for nearly 7 hours without stopping, was growing quiet. His little body, which had been stiff with distress, was starting to relax. The refugees nearby noticed too. They turned to look, their whispered conversations falling silent. More and more people gathered around, watching the strange sight of a human woman holding a Volante baby. Laura kept humming. She did not look up, did not acknowledge the watching crowd. All her attention was on the small life in her arms. She could feel Malik calming, could feel the tension leaving his tiny muscles. And then he stopped crying completely. The silence was sudden and shocking. After hours of constant noise, the quiet felt almost unreal. Kethra let out a sob, her body shaking with relief. Torvik stood frozen, his old eyes wide with amazement. Malik opened his eyes. They were large and amber, like his mother's, but filled now with a peace that had not been there before. He looked up at Laura, at her strange round face and her strange round eyes, and he did not cry. Instead, his tiny hand reached up and grabbed hold of her uniform, holding on as if he had found something safe. How? Kethra breathed. How did you do that? Lavra smiled down at the baby, still swaying gently. I am not sure, she admitted. I just held him close and hummed. It is something we do for our own babies. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Danny Ortega pushed through the crowd, his medical scanner already in his hand. He had heard the crying stop and come running, thinking something was wrong. Captain? He said, confused by the scene in front of him. Danny, scan him, Lavra said, nodding toward the baby. Tell me what you see. Danny raised his scanner and pointed it at Malik. Numbers and readings appeared on the small screen. His eyebrows went up as he read them. His stress hormones are dropping fast, Danny reported. Heart rate is slowing to normal. He is actually falling asleep. Kethra made a sound that was half laugh, half cry. Asleep. He's falling asleep. He has not slept in 2 days. Scan the captain too, Torvak said suddenly. Scan her. Danny looked surprised, but he did as the old captain asked. He pointed the scanner at Laura, reading the data that appeared. Body temperature 37.2 degrees Celsius. Danny read. That is normal for a human, but significantly warmer than Volanthi average. Heart rate 68 beats per minute, steady and regular. And he paused, looking closer at the screen. The heart rate is producing a low-frequency vibration that travels through the body. Torvik stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Laura. What frequency? Danny checked his readings again. About 1 to 2 hertz. Why? Torvik let out a breath, almost a laugh. That is almost exactly the frequency of our home planet. The frequency that calms our young. The watching crowd began to murmur. They had all heard stories about humans, strange and sometimes frightening stories. But none of those stories had prepared them for this. You are warm, Kethra said softly, reaching out to touch Laura's arm. She pulled her hand back quickly, surprised by the heat. So warm. And your heart makes a sound we cannot hear, but our babies can feel. Lavra looked down at Malik. He was fully asleep now, his small face peaceful and calm. His hand still held onto her uniform, refusing to let go even in sleep. On Earth, we call this skin-to-skin contact, Lavra explained. Human babies need it too, especially right after they are born. The warmth and the heartbeat help them feel safe. We did not know it would work for other species. It works, Kethra said, tears streaming down her face. It works. News traveled fast through the refugee ship. Within an hour, every Volanthi on board knew what had happened. The human captain had calmed a baby that no one else could calm. The human body had something that Volanthi babies needed. Other mothers began to come forward, carrying their own crying infants. They were shy at first, unsure if they should ask for help from these strangers. But their children were suffering, and they were desperate. Lavra called her crew together. Danny, Rosa, Sam, and Nate gathered around her, looking at the growing group of Volanthi mothers. I need you all to help, Lavra said. The Volanthi infants need warmth and heartbeat to calm down. Our bodies can provide that. Are you willing? Of course, Danny said immediately. The others nodded. Rosa, who rarely showed emotion, had a soft look in her eyes as she watched the crying babies. Sam was already rolling up his sleeves, ready to help. Even Nate, the serious security officer, stepped forward without hesitation. They spent the next several hours holding babies. it was strange work for a space crew. They were used to fixing engines, navigating stars, scanning planets. But now they sat in the corridors of a refugee ship, cradling tiny alien infants against their chests. They hummed songs from Earth, rocked gently back and forth, and let their bodies do what came naturally. One by one, the babies stopped crying. Kethra sat beside Laura, watching the human woman hold Malik. The baby had slept for 3 hours now, longer than he had slept since they fled their planet. Kethra had slept too, just for a little while, leaning against the wall with her head on her knees. It was the first real rest she had gotten in days. "I do not understand," Kethra said quietly. "We have met many species in the galaxy. None of them could do what you do. None of them had bodies that comforted our young." Laura thought about this for a moment. "Humans evolved on a dangerous world," she said. "Our babies are born helpless. They cannot walk or feed themselves for a long time. So we develop strong instincts to protect them, to comfort them, to keep them close." She looked around at her crew, at the Volanthi mothers who watched them with grateful eyes. "Maybe those instincts work for more than just human babies," she said. "Maybe they work for anyone who needs comfort." Kethra was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took Laura's free hand in her own. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for holding my son. Thank you for making the crying stop." Laura squeezed her hand gently. "You are welcome. And Kethra, I promise you, we are going to get you somewhere safe. You and Malik and everyone on this ship. You are not alone anymore." In her arms, Malik slept peacefully, his small hand still holding onto her uniform dot, and for the first time since her world ended, Kethra allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. The next 2 days changed everything. Word of what the humans had done spread not just through the refugee ship, but beyond it. The Volanthi had communication devices that connected to the wider galactic network. Within hours, messages were being sent to other Volanthi survivors, to friendly species, to news stations on distant planets. A human crew had stopped the crying babies. A human heart had created the frequency of a lost world. On the refugee ship, the humans worked without rest. Rosa Delgado spent 16 hours straight in the engine room, lying on her back under broken machines, her hands covered in oil and coolant. She worked alongside Peth, the young Volanthi engineer, teaching him tricks she had learned over 20 years of keeping ships running. Together, they rebuilt the power systems using spare parts from the Wanderer and pieces they created from scraps. "I have never seen anyone work like you," Peth admitted during a short break. "You do not stop." Rosa shrugged. "The work needs to be done, so I do it. But are you not tired?" "Of course I am tired," Rosa said. "But those people up there need this ship to work. Being tired does not change that." Peth looked at her with new respect. He had been taught that humans were strange and sometimes dangerous. No one had told him they were stubborn in the best possible way. In the medical area, Danny Ortega had set up a small clinic. He worked with Sarath, the old Volanthi healer, treating wounds that had not been properly cleaned, infections that had started to spread, broken bones that had not been set correctly. The two medics were very different, but they found a rhythm together. "Your medicines are strange," Sarath commented as Danny injected a Volanthi child with antibiotics. "They work so fast." "Different biology," Danny explained. "Our bodies fight infection aggressively. Our medicines do the same. Is that why you are so warm? To fight infection?" Danny had not thought about it that way before. "Maybe. Humans maintain a high body temperature. It helps our immune systems work better. It also makes our bodies good at healing." Sarath watched him work for a moment longer. "I have lived for nearly 300 years, the old healer said. "I have met many species. I thought I understood the galaxy. But you humans are something I did not expect. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? Danny asked. Sarath smiled, a rare expression on his tired face. I am still deciding. Meanwhile, Sam and Nate moved through the ship, helping wherever they could. Sam fixed broken lighting panels and cleared blocked air vents. Nate organized the food distribution, making sure everyone got equal shares, settling arguments before they could become fights. Both men took turns holding babies when the mothers needed rest. Never thought I would be doing this, Nate admitted as he rocked a sleeping infant in his large arms. I trained for combat, security, protecting people from threats. Not this. Sam laughed quietly, careful not to wake the baby he was holding. Maybe this is protecting people. Just a different kind. Nate thought about that. The baby in his arms made a small sound and snuggled closer to his chest. Something in Nate's heart, something he usually kept locked away, began to soften. Yeah, he said finally. Maybe it is. Captain Torvak watched all of this from a distance. He'd been a ship captain for over 100 years. He had traded with dozens of species, avoided pirates, survived 2 wars. He thought he understood how the galaxy worked. The strong took from the weak. Everyone looked out for themselves first. Trust was a luxury most could not afford, but the humans did not follow. These rules they gave without expecting anything in return. They worked until they collapsed, then got up and worked again. They held babies that were not their own and sang songs from their home planet. They acted as if the Volanti were family, not strangers. Torvak found Laura in the corridor late on the second day. She was sitting on the floor with Malik in her arms. The baby was awake now, looking up at her with curious amber eyes. Kethra was nearby, finally getting real sleep for the first time in many days. Captain Bennett, Torvak said, settling down beside her with old creaking joints. May I ask you something? Of course, Lavra said. Why? The question was simple, but it carried the weight of everything Torvik did not understand. Why are you doing all of this? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you in return. Some of our people have not even said thank you. But you keep helping. Why? Lavra thought about the question for a long moment. She looked down at Malik, at his small face and wide eyes. She thought about her crew, working themselves to exhaustion for people they had just met. She thought about Earth, so far away, and the billions of humans who called it home. On Earth, she said slowly, we have a saying. What is the word? It does not translate perfectly. The closest I can come is this. When you see someone in trouble, you help. Not because you expect something back. Not because it benefits you. But because it is the right thing to do. But why is it the right thing? Torvik pressed. In a galaxy where resources are limited and species compete for survival, why would you risk your own well-being for strangers? Lavra smiled softly. Because we have been strangers too. Humans spent most of our history fighting each other, hurting each other, failing to help when we should have. We learned, slowly and painfully, that cooperation is better than competition. That kindness spreads further than cruelty. That we are stronger when we help others than when we stand alone. She looked at Torvak with steady eyes. We are not perfect, Captain. We have made terrible mistakes. But we are trying to be better. And part of being better is seeing suffering and doing something about it. Torvak was quiet for a long time. In the silence, they could hear the sounds of the ship. The hum of the repaired engines. The soft voices of refugees speaking with hope for the first time since their world ended. The gentle breathing of sleeping babies. I have heard stories about humans, Torvak admitted. Not all of them were good. I am sure some of those stories are true, Lavra agreed. Like I said, we are not perfect. We can be violent, destructive, foolish. We have wars and crimes and cruelty, just like any species. Then how do you also have this? Torvak gestured at the scene around them. This kindness, this warmth, this instinct to protect. Lara looked down at Malik again. The baby had fallen asleep, his small body rising and falling with each breath. His hand held her finger, gripping it tightly, even in sleep. Maybe those things exist in us because of each other, she said. Maybe the same capacity that lets us hurt is the same capacity that lets us love. The difference is choice. Every day, we choose which one to express. And you choose kindness? We try too, Lara said. Not always successfully. But we try. Torvak sat with this knowledge for a long moment. Then he reached out and placed his four-fingered hand on Laura's shoulder. Captain Bennett, he said formally, on behalf of the Volanti people, I thank you. Not just for the repairs and the medicine and the food, but for showing us that there is still kindness in this galaxy. After what we have lost, after what we have seen, that is perhaps the greatest gift you could give. Lara covered his hand with her own. You are welcome, Captain Torvak. And I promise you, this is only the beginning. We are going to get your people to safety. And after that, we are going to help you build a new home. How? Torvak asked. We have nothing left. Our world is gone. Our resources, our history, our future, all destroyed. Lara smiled, a warm expression that reached her eyes. You have 3,000 people who survived against impossible odds. You have knowledge and skills and stories and dreams. That is not nothing, Captain. That is everything. And with help, you can build something new. Torvak looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since his world died, the old captain allowed himself to cry. Lara held his hand and let him weep. She did not offer empty words or quick comfort. She simply stayed with him, a steady presence in the darkness. A warm hand in the cold of space. And in her other arm, a baby slept peacefully, unaware of the pain around him, knowing only that he was warm and safe and held. The journey to Haven's Rest took 5 more days. The Wanderer flew alongside the refugee ship the entire way, like a guard dog walking beside a wounded friend. Rosa had done enough repairs to keep the engines running, but everyone felt better knowing the human ship was close. During those 5 days, the two crews became something more than allies. They became family. Danny taught the Volanti Megs human healing techniques. They learned about bandages and stitches, about how humans stopped bleeding and fought infection. In return, Sarath taught Danny about Volanti medicine, about the plants from their lost world that could cure almost anything, about the way their bodies healed differently from humans. Rosa and Peth kept the engines running together. They created a language of gestures and drawings when words failed, pointing at broken parts and nodding when they understood. By the end of the journey, Peth could fix human machines and Rosa could repair Volanti technology. Sam organized games for the children. He taught them sports from Earth, simple games with balls and running and laughing. The Volanti children had not laughed since their world died. Now their voices echoed through the ship, light and happy, a sound that made the adults stop and smile even through their grief. Nate became an unofficial protector for the refugees. He walked through the corridors at night, checking on people, making sure everyone was safe. Some of the Volanti were afraid of him at first, because he was large and serious and did not smile much. But then they saw him carrying an elderly woman to the medical bay, saw him giving his food rations to hungry children, saw him sitting quietly with a grieving father who had lost his family. They learned that his serious face hid a gentle heart, and Lara continued to care for Malik. Kethra tried many times to take her son back, to give the human captain a rest. But every time she tried, Malik would begin to cry again. He had become attached to Lara, to her warmth and her heartbeat and the soft songs she hummed. Kethra could hold him for short periods, but but he always reached for Lavra when he became upset. "I am sorry," Kethra said one evening, embarrassed. "He should want his mother." "He does want his mother," Lavra assured her. "He loves you. But right now, he also needs something your body cannot give him. There is no shame in that, but you cannot hold him forever." Lavra smiled. "No, but I have an idea." She called Danny over and explained what she needed. Danny thought for a moment, then his face lit up. "A heartbeat simulator," he said. "I can build one. It is not complicated. A small device that produces the same vibration as a human heart, with a warming element to match human body temperature. Could you make it small enough for Kethra to wear?" Lavra asked. "Easily. Give me a few hours." Danny worked through the night. By morning, he had created a small disc about the size of his palm. It strapped to the chest and produced a gentle pulse, exactly 68 beats per minute. It also generated warmth, matching human body temperature perfectly. Kethra put on the device and held Malik against her chest. The baby fussed for a moment, sensing the change. But then he felt the pulse, felt the warmth, and slowly relaxed. Within minutes, he was sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms. Kethra wept with joy. "Thank you," she said to Danny. "Thank you, thank you." Danny made more devices over the next few days, one for every mother with a young infant. The crying that had filled the ship was replaced by quiet, peaceful silence. The babies slept. The mothers rested. The whole ship seemed to breathe easier. When they finally reached Haven's Rest, a crowd was waiting for them. The station was massive, a city floating in space. It served as neutral ground for dozens of species, a place where anyone could come for help. But even by Haven's Rest standards, the arrival of the Volanti refugees was unusual. News of the human crew had spread across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see the species that had saved the crying babies. Laura stood with Torvak as they docked with the station. Through the window, they could see thousands of beings watching their arrival. Some were curious. Some were suspicious. Some looked hopeful. "Are you ready?" Lavra asked. "No," Torvak admitted. "But I never expected to be ready. I will do my best. That is all any of us can do." They walked off the ship together, the Volanti captain and the human captain, side by side. Behind them came the refugees, 3,000 survivors of a dead world. They walked slowly, blinking in the bright lights of the station, overwhelmed by the space and the noise in the crowds. Kethra walked near the front, Malik in her arms. The baby was awake, looking around with curious amber eyes. The heartbeat device pulsed against Kethra's chest, keeping him calm, keeping him safe. A representative from the station approached them, a tall being with blue skin and 6 arms. He introduced himself as Director Voss, the head of refugee services. "Welcome to Haven's Rest," he said to Torvak. "We have heard about your journey. We have prepared housing and food and medical care for your people." "Thank you," Torvak said. "We are grateful." Director Voss turned to Lara. "And you are the human captain? The one they call the baby whisperer?" Lara blinked. "I have never been called that before. It is spreading across the network. The story of how you calmed the crying infants. How your body gave them what they needed." Voss studied her with curious eyes. "Humans are a young species. Many in the galaxy did not know what to expect from you. This story has changed some opinions. We just did what anyone would do," Lavra said. "That is not true," Voss replied. "I have worked with refugees for 200 years. I have seen many species pass through this station. Most help only when it benefits them. What you did was different. You helped because you saw suffering and wanted to stop it. That is rare in this galaxy." Lavra did not know what to say to that. She looked at Kethra, at Malik, at the thousands of refugees who had somehow survived the end of their world. She thought about her crew, about the long days and sleepless nights, about the babies they had held and the tears they had wiped away. "We are not special," she said finally. "We are just human. This is what humans do." The next few weeks were busy. The refugees were settled into temporary housing. The injured were treated at the station's hospital. Plans were made for finding the Volanti a new home, a planet where they could rebuild their civilization. On the day the Wanderer was set to leave, Kethra came to say goodbye. She found Laura in the docking bay, supervising the loading of supplies. Malik was in her arms, healthy and calm, his amber eyes bright with curiosity. The heartbeat device hummed softly against Kethra's chest. "You are leaving," Kethra said. "We have to," Lavra replied. "There are other ships in distress, other people who need help. But I will come back to visit when I can." Kethra nodded slowly. She looked down at her son, then back at the human woman who had changed their lives. "Malik will not remember you," she said softly. "He is too young. When he grows up, he will not know your face or your voice or the way you held him." "That is okay," Lavra said. "I will remember him. That is enough." "No," Kethra said firmly. "I will make sure he knows. I will tell him the story every day. About the human captain who held him when no one else could. About the warmth of your body and the beating of your heart. About how you made time seem to stop." She stepped forward and pressed her forehead against Laura's, a Volanti gesture of deep respect and love. "I will tell him that when we were lost and scared and broken, a human found us and showed us kindness. And I will tell him to always, always stand with Earth." Lavra felt tears prick her eyes. She reached out and gently touched Malik's small hand. The baby grabbed her finger, holding on tight, just as he had done that first day. "Grow up strong, little one," Lavra whispered. "And remember that you are never alone. Wherever you go, whatever happens, there will always be someone ready to help." She stepped back, letting go of his hand. Malik watched her with bright amber eyes, too young to understand, but somehow sensing the importance of the moment. Lavra turned and walked toward her ship. Her crew was waiting for her, standing at the entrance of the Wanderer. Danny waved. Rosa nodded. Sam and Nate stood at attention, ready for whatever came next as the ship lifted off and left the station behind. Lavra looked out the window at the shrinking lights of Haven's Rest. Somewhere down there, a young mother was holding her son, telling him a story about a human who had made the crying stop. And in the great wide galaxy, the story was spreading. The story of a species called human, who carried warmth in their bodies and kindness in their hearts, who helped strangers because it was the right thing to do, who could calm a crying baby with nothing but their touch and their heartbeat. It was a good story, Lavra thought. A true story. And it was only the beginning. 20 years later, a young Volanti diplomat named Malik stood before the Galactic Council. He was tall for his species, with bright amber eyes and a confident voice. He had come to argue for Earth's inclusion in the Council, a controversial position that many opposed. "You ask why we should trust humans," Malik said to the assembled delegates. "I understand your concerns. They are a young species, sometimes violent, sometimes unpredictable. But I know something about humans that many of you do not." He paused, looking around the great chamber,